The richest person you know is probably someone you would never guess. It is not the loudest car in the lot or the biggest announcement in the room. This is the person who drives something sensible, lives in a house smaller than they could afford, and checks their bank balance without their stomach dropping. That calm is not luck. It is the entire point. Real wealth in 2026 does not announce itself. It gets quiet, it gets comfortable, and from the outside it looks almost unbearably boring. Today, you will see why that boredom is the tell. Let me start with the idea that changes everything once you actually absorb it. Wealth is invisible. That sounds like a line, but it is closer to a law of physics. The watch on someone's wrist, the badge on the front of their car, the square footage of the house they post from, all of that is money that has already left the building. You are looking at spending. You are not looking at wealth. What you are seeing is the receipt, not the account balance. Think about what a car payment really is. When you finance a $50,000 vehicle, you commit to handing over something like $700 a month for years, and the thing you bought loses value the entire time you own it. Now imagine a person who buys a reliable, unremarkable car and quietly invests that same $700 a month instead. Over just 6 years, at the long-run stock market return, that boring choice grows to nearly $70,000. One person is driving a symbol. The other is building a foundation. And here is the uncomfortable part. From the outside, the second person looks like they are doing worse. That gap between how wealth looks and how wealth works is where almost everyone gets lost. We were trained by advertising, by social feeds, by 1,000 tiny signals to read money in objects. So we assume the person with the flashiest life has the most. Very often, the opposite is true. The loud spender is frequently the fragile 1-2 missed paychecks from a crisis, holding everything together with minimum payments and hope. The quiet one, the person who looks like they might be broke, is often the one sleeping soundly. If you want proof instead of vibes, we actually have it, and the numbers are worth sitting with. The largest study of millionaires ever conducted followed 10,000 of them, and it dismantled almost everything people assume about who gets rich. 79% of these millionaires received no inheritance at all. Not a small inheritance. Nothing. They were not handed a head start. On top of that, only a tiny sliver ever received a windfall of $1 million or more from family. The trust fund story we tell ourselves about rich people is, for the vast majority, simply false. It gets more surprising. 1 in 3 of these millionaires never earned 6 figures in a single working year of their entire life. Let that land for a second. A third of them never had what most people would call a big salary, ever, and they still crossed the $1 million mark. The careers that produced the most millionaires were not glamorous at all. Engineer, accountant, and teacher all landed near the top of the list. The person who taught your kid long division is statistically more likely to retire wealthy than the loud executive with the least sports car, because only about 15% of these millionaires ever held a senior leadership title. This was not a club of chief executives. It was a quiet army of ordinary earners doing unremarkable things for a very long time. So what were they doing? Nothing that would ever go viral. They lived on less than they made, invested steadily, and avoided debt like it was contagious. More than 9 in 10 of them said they simply worked hard and stayed consistent. There was no single brilliant move, no perfect stock pick, no dramatic origin story. That is the part that makes it boring, and the boredom is exactly why it works. The strategy is available to almost anyone. It just refuses to entertain you along the way. To understand why boring is the winning move, you have to understand the engine underneath it, and the engine is compounding. Compounding is the most patient force in finance, and it is spectacularly dull to watch in real time. Over the last century, the broad American stock market has returned somewhere around 10% a year on average. In any single year, the number bounces all over the place, up 30, down 20, sideways for a while. But stretched across decades, that average does something almost unfair to your intuition. There is a rough shortcut called the Rule of 72. Take 72, divide it by your annual return, and you get the number of years it takes your money to double. At the stock market's long-run average, that means your money roughly doubles every 7 years or so. Doubling does not sound dramatic until you follow it out. $1 becomes 2, then 4, then 8, then 16. The early doubles feel pointless. The later ones are enormous. And this is why the people who win are almost never the exciting ones. The exciting investor is jumping in and out, chasing the hot thing, and interrupting the doubling right when it starts to matter. The boring investor buys a simple index fund and then does the hardest thing in all of personal finance. They leave it alone. Here is how quietly that patience turns into something enormous. Put $500 a month into a plain index fund, earning that long-run average, and after 30 years, you are sitting on more than $1 million. You did not do anything clever. You just kept feeding the machine and refused to touch it. Now here is the line that should make every younger person watching lean in. If you start that same $500 a month at 25 instead of 35, you do not end up with a little more. You end up with roughly 3 times as much. 10 years of doing nothing exciting early can be worth well over $1 million. Time is the ingredient, and time only rewards the people calm enough to wait. I want to show you the most revealing number in modern American finance because it captures this entire idea in a single gap. Vanguard tracks the retirement accounts of nearly 5 million workers. In their most recent report, the average 401k balance was about $168,000. That sounds encouraging until you look at the median, the person standing at the exact middle of everyone. The median balance was only about $44,000. Sit with how large that gap is. The average is nearly 4 times the median. That gap is not a rounding quirk. It is the whole story. A relatively small group of quiet, consistent savers has built such large balances that they drag the average far above what a typical person actually has. In other words, the boring people are hiding inside that average, pulling it upward, while most of the country sits down near that $44,000 median. And a median balance of $44,000 using a standard withdrawal rate produces only about $150 a month in retirement. That is the real emergency, and it is happening quietly without anyone posting about it. So how do the quiet ones actually pull ahead? The first mechanism is almost embarrassingly simple. They automate. Real wealth is not built by heroic willpower every month. It is built by decisions you make once and then forget. The people who succeed set up an automatic transfer that moves money into investments the same day their paycheck lands, before they can feel it, spend it, or talk themselves out of it. They pay themselves first, and they let the boring machinery run in the background of their lives. The data backs this up in a striking way. A record share of large retirement plans now enroll new workers automatically, which means the saving happens by default and stopping requires effort. When the boring choice is the automatic one, people build wealth almost by accident. When the exciting choice is the default, they stay broke almost by accident. That is the entire secret. Design your money so the wealthy behavior happens on autopilot and the reckless behavior takes work. Underneath the investing sits a second boring layer that nobody wants to talk about, and that is the humble emergency fund. Right now, a good high-yield savings account pays somewhere around 4%, while the typical big bank savings account pays almost nothing, often a fraction of a single percent. Move $10,000 from a sleepy account into a high-yield one, and you go from earning a couple of dollars a year to earning roughly $400. That is real money for doing nothing but paying attention once. But the interest is not even the main reason it matters. The real job of that boring cash cushion is emotional. When your car dies or your job disappears, the person with 3 to 6 months of expenses and savings handles it and moves on. The person without it does the single most destructive thing an investor can do. They panic sell. They yank their investments out at the worst possible moment, locking in losses, interrupting the compounding, and undoing years of quiet progress. The boring emergency fund is what lets the boring investment survive a bad month. One protects the other, neither is exciting, and together they are almost unbeatable. There is one more boring habit that shows up over and over in the wealthy, and it is their strange, almost old-fashioned relationship with debt. In that same study of 10,000 millionaires, about 3 out of 4 said they had never carried a credit card balance in their entire lives. Not once. And 94% of them said they simply live on less than they make. Read those two numbers together and a picture forms. These are people who treat a credit card as a tool rather than a lifeline, who pay it off in full every month, and who refuse to rent a lifestyle they cannot yet afford. High-interest debt is really just compounding pointed in the wrong direction. Every dollar of it works against you with the same quiet patience that makes investing so effective. The wealthy understood something plain. You cannot outrun interest that is running the other way, so they never let it start in the first place. The boring path has a second pillar sitting underneath the investing, and it is one of the least glamorous purchases in the world. A home you can actually afford, slowly paid off. The numbers here are hard to ignore. Recent federal data shows the median net worth of American homeowners sits near $400,000, while the median for renters is closer to $10,000. That is a gap of almost 40 to 1. A paid-off house is not exciting. Nobody films the moment they make their final mortgage payment the way they film a new car in the driveway. But it quietly erases the single largest expense most families carry, right around the time their working income begins to fade. The plain formula that built most everyday millionaires is almost insultingly simple. Invest steadily in a retirement account and buy a reasonable home and actually pay it off. That is the whole recipe. No leverage, no flipping, no drama, just 2 boring decisions repeated for a couple of decades. You might be waiting for the part where I reveal the clever investment, the specific pick that does all the heavy lifting. There is not one, and that absence is the entire point. The boring approach that has quietly created more everyday millionaires than any hot tip is simply buying a low-cost fund that owns a small slice of the whole market, and then buying more of it on a schedule and holding on. It is not thrilling. You will never have a dramatic story to tell at a dinner party. Yet it has outperformed the large majority of professional stock pickers over almost any long stretch of time, and it asks nothing of you except the patience to leave it alone. The excitement of constant trading is expensive. The boredom of steady owning is what actually pays. Now hold all of that quiet machinery up against the loud version of money, the kind designed to be seen. There is an entire style of spending whose only real purpose is to broadcast success to strangers. The logos turned outward, the endless upgrades, the need for everyone nearby to know the price of things. Watch closely, and you start to notice that the people performing wealth the hardest are frequently the ones with the least of it underneath. The performance itself is the tell. Real security has nothing to prove, so it tends to fall silent. The person who is truly comfortable is not thinking about whether you can see their comfort. They are too busy enjoying the part of it that never shows up in a photo, which is the simple permanent absence of financial fear. Before we go further, if this is reshaping how you think about money, subscribe and stick around. I break down the calm, unglamorous side of building wealth every single week, and the next idea we get into is one that quietly wrecks more high earners than any recession ever has. So let us keep going, because this next pattern is the one that catches even smart people off guard. That pattern has a boring name and a brutal effect. It is called lifestyle creep. Here is how it works. You get a raise, and within a month or two, your spending rises to swallow it. A bigger apartment, a nicer car, slightly more expensive everything. The raise vanishes into your lifestyle, and your savings rate never actually moves. You could double your income over a decade and be exactly as fragile at the end as you were at the start, just with fancier problems. This is why so many people earning very comfortable salaries still live paycheck to paycheck. Their spending is a shadow that grows the moment their income does. The people who quietly get wealthy do something that feels almost strange in a culture built on more. They define enough. They decide on purpose what a good life actually costs for them. And then they let their income climb past that line without letting their spending follow. When a raise comes, the difference goes straight into investing rather than into an upgrade. It looks like they are leaving joy on the table. What they are really doing is buying the most valuable thing money can purchase, which is freedom. And freedom does not photograph well. That is why you never see it. Consider a hypothetical that plays out constantly in real life. Marlon earns $200,000 a year and looks the part completely. The car, the watch, the vacations, the address. Everyone assumes he is wealthy. But his spending rose to match every raise he ever got, so he saves almost nothing. And if his income stopped, his entire life would collapse within about 2 months. Now picture Bernadette, a recently retired school teacher who never once cracked 6 figures. She drove modest cars, lived in the same small home for decades, and quietly invested a piece of every paycheck for 35 years. She is a millionaire. Marlon looks rich and is fragile. Bernadette looks ordinary and is free. Only one of them ever has to worry, and it is not the one you would guess from the outside. For the clearest living example of this entire philosophy, look at one of the richest people on the planet. Warren Buffett is worth well over $100 billion, and he still lives in the same house in Omaha he bought back in 1958 for $31,500. That home is now worth well over $1 million, which means it quietly appreciated more than 40 times over while he simply lived in it. He drives himself around. He has talked about being perfectly happy with a breakfast that costs a few dollars, and for years he used an old flip phone. His own line is that at a certain point, possessions start to possess you. The wealthiest investor of his era chose the boring house, the boring car, and the boring routine. And that choice is not a quirk. It is the philosophy that built the fortune in the first place. And Buffett is still making the same point at 95. In 2026, with the market hitting record highs and huge numbers of people pouring money into fast, exciting bets, he offered a warning that fits this whole video. He said it is hard to find real value when everyone around you would rather gamble, and he pointed out that there is far more money to be made cultivating gamblers than cultivating investors. That is the trap in one sentence. The financial world is loud because loud is profitable for the people selling it to you. The boring path has no marketing budget because nobody gets rich selling you patience. You can see exactly what he means if you look at where the energy is flowing right now. With the market climbing to record highs, enormous amounts of money have rushed toward the fastest, most thrilling bets available, whether that is single-day options that expire within hours, prediction markets where people wager on the news, or whatever coin happens to be spiking that particular week. All of it is engineered to feel like opportunity, and all of it is loud by design. because that loudness is how it recruits you. The boring investor watches the whole circus, shrugs, and keeps sending the same automatic transfer into the same simple fund month after month. 10 years from now, the majority of the gamblers will have a pile of stories and very little to show for them, while the person who was too bored to play will have quietly won. Excitement and wealth are almost never found in the same place at the same time, and once you truly accept that, the noise begins to lose its grip on you. This is worth being honest about, because it explains why the boring truth stays hidden. An entire industry is built on making you feel behind. The flashy trade, the hot new asset, the story of the person who got rich overnight, all of it is engineered to be exciting because excitement sells. Steady index investing, an automatic transfer, and a paid-off modest car generate no headlines and no hype. So the quiet strategy that actually works gets drowned out by the loud strategies that mostly do not. You are not behind because you missed a secret. You are behind because the truth was too boring to trend. Once you really see this, something shifts in how you read the world around you. The person performing wealth on your feed becomes a little less impressive and a little more worrying. The neighbor with the calm demeanor and the older car becomes a lot more interesting. You start to notice that the loudest financial energy usually comes from the least secure people, and that the genuinely wealthy tend to be almost suspiciously relaxed. They are relaxed because they are not performing for anyone. They already have the thing everyone else is trying to look like they have. It helps to imagine what this actually looks like on a random Tuesday, because that is where real wealth quietly gives itself away. The secure person is not doing anything remarkable at all. They are moving through an ordinary day like everyone else, except a surprise bill does not spike their heart rate, and a slow week at work does not keep them awake at night. Their money is already handled, flowing in the background through transfers they set up long ago and rarely think about anymore. There is no performance happening because there is no audience and no need for one. That flat, almost dull sense of calm is the entire reward. It is the exact feeling that all the noise and all the spending is secretly trying to imitate, and it is the one version that cannot be faked, because it rests on what you truly have rather than on what you manage to appear to have. So let us be clear about what real wealth actually is, underneath all the noise. Forget the number you show other people. What matters far more is the number of mornings you wake up without dread. Real wealth is the ability to absorb a surprise bill, a job loss, or a bad year without your life quietly falling apart. Underneath all of it, what you are really buying is options and calm and time that belongs to you. A truly wealthy life is often astonishingly quiet because peace does not need an audience. The whole reason it looks boring from the outside is that all the real action is invisible. It is happening in accounts nobody sees, in habits nobody claps for, and in a nervous system that finally gets to rest. Here is the freeing part of all of this. If wealth is boring, then it is also learnable, repeatable, and available to regular people on regular incomes. You do not need a viral moment or a genius idea. You need to spend less than you earn, invest the difference automatically, keep a cash cushion so you never panic, avoid expensive debt, and then do the single hardest thing, which is to wait while it compounds. That is not a secret reserved for the lucky. It is a boring routine anyone can start this month, and the earlier you start it, the more absurdly generous the math becomes. The people who look rich are often just people spending their future to decorate their present. The people who are rich usually look like they are getting away with something ordinary. Choose to be the second kind. Let your life look a little boring on the surface while the real wealth builds quietly underneath, and give it enough time, and one day you will be the calm person that someone else looks at and never suspects. That quiet, unbothered version of you is the whole prize. If you want to go one level deeper on this, The next thing worth understanding is the set of basic money lessons that schools never actually taught any of us, the ones that make every habit in this video fall into place. I put all of that into another video for you to watch next, because this stuff makes far more sense once the foundation underneath it is solid. Before you go, I want to hear from you, because these conversations get real in the comments. Which side of this have you lived? Have you ever chased the loud version of success and regretted it, or quietly chosen the boring path and watched it pay off? What is one habit that changed your relationship with money, and what is the thing you wish someone had told you 10 years earlier? Drop your story below, tell me what surprised you most in this video, and if a specific number stuck with you, let me know which one. I read these, and the honesty in this community helps more people than you realize. So share what you learned, and let us keep this going.